Hello and welcome. You're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Sarah Jacob. Our top story is a horribly tragic one. An Assam Rifles Colonel, his wife and 8-year-old son and 4 soldiers have been killed in an ambush by terrorists near the border with Myanmar in Manipur. The terror attack, one of the deadliest in the region in recent times, took place at 11 a.m. in Manipur's Churachandpur district in a fresh eruption of militant violence in the border state. We now just have information coming in that the PLA and the MNPF, the insurgent groups, have claimed responsibility for this attack, for this ambush. There was an improvised explosive device or an IED blast before heavy firing from both sides of the road began. But this seems to be the first time that civilians have died in an ambush in this remote area of the district. The location is an extremely remote village about 50 kilometers from Churachandpur. The Defence Minister Rajnath Singh condemned the attack, gave his condolences. He called it a cowardly attack on the Assam Rifles convoy in Manipur. It's extremely painful and condemnable. The nation has lost 5 brave soldiers, including the commanding officer of the Assam Rifles and 2 of his family members. My condolences to the bereaved families. The perpetrators will be brought to justice soon, Mr. Singh tweeted. The Manipur Chief Minister N. Biren Singh tweeted that a counter-operation has been launched to track down the terrorists.
Learned that some militant terrorist group have ambushed and killed one Assam Rifles officer along with his family, and it is very unfortunate, and I strongly condemn this type of cowardly act. He was traveling along with his family, the Assam Rifles show. So this type of act is strongly condemned, and mass combing operation along with the paramilitary forces and the police commandos has started in the area to nab the culprit, and justice will be delivered. We'll definitely put them.
And now 2 insurgent groups have claimed responsibility for this dastardly attack. But before that information came in, I spoke with the Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, former DG of the Assam Rifles. And joining us now is Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, the former DG of the Assam Rifles, the former chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group. Let's go across Mr. Chauhan first. So, first and foremost, your reaction, I want to ask whether this is the first time or if it's in a long time that civilians have died in an ambush in this district, in an area like this, because certainly sitting here in a studio far away from this district in Manipur, at least in my memory as a reporter, as a journalist, it seems unusual to be reporting the death of civilians, family members also.
Sarah, I agree with you entirely. I'm deeply shocked, deeply distressed by this loss of lives. My deepest condolences to the families of the bereaved soldiers, and of course the commanding officer, his wife, his son. This is just not done. It's never been done. We've had attacks before on our force. We've suffered casualties, but this kind of issue has just not been done. And this is not something we can say was done by mistake, because they would have known that the commanding officer had gone to the company operating base. They would have known the strength. They would have seen who all were with him, and he was returning from the company operating base. So this is deliberate. It's actually something that needs to be not just condemned, but the perpetrators need to be brought to justice immediately, and they will be brought to justice.
All right. If I could just, follow up a little more on this, what would the SOP be for family members traveling along? I can understand in, very remote areas, there are these officers who haven't seen family members. It's both sides. It's a great picture here. But was there a lapse? What is the standard operating procedure? Was that followed?
Sarah, I'm certain that the standard operating procedures are followed. The issue about families in the Assam Rifles is that our soldiers because they are continuously in these areas, we have limited family accommodation in places. And the CEO's wife, therefore, would be going to meet those family members of these soldiers. And this is an acceptable issue, and again, as I say, only in the Assam Rifles. Because of the presence of family members in company operating bases, that we allow the officer and his family to accompany him so that she can find out the problems that might exist as a welfare measure. So this would probably be the case, because Mrs. Tripathi would have gone along with the colonel and taken their son along just to find out the problems. Whether it was a lapse or not, Sarah, I don't agree. If you've seen the terrain as I have seen the terrain, there's just a single road. It's a very heavily wooded area, very heavy primary and secondary jungles. And this area has not seen operations or problems for the last 2 years or so. So maybe people thought that there would be nothing happening, or maybe there might have been a lack of information. But definitely there are two things that I am absolutely clear about, that seeing the kind of work that the army has done in Churachandpur, the locals would not be involved. We've had a press release from the Zomi chiefs who have strongly condemned this operation. These are the chiefs of the villages that are there. Yes, that's the picture. You can see just a single road, and on both sides it's there. And also the other thing is, Sarah, it's very close to the BP 50, which is on the Indo-Myanmar border, just about 20 odd kilometers away. So maybe somebody would have come from there and gone back.
Well, then that leads me to ask, sir, that would lead me to ask, the Defence Minister has tweeted, as has the Chief Minister, both of them saying, of course, that, whoever's behind this, the perpetrators will be brought to book, there will be justice, etc. How challenging is that, given the terrain, as you point out, given how close we are to the border, and in your opinion, the perpetrators would have crossed over, the fact that the attack took place hours ago now, it's at 10 a.m.
Yes, Sarah, it took part. You see, that's another thing. Normally the insurgents attack either early morning or late in the evening. They don't attack in the morning, because at that time everybody is on the way, on the road, and so the whole thing seems a little different from what is the previous issues. We will bring them to justice. After all, we brought the NSC&K group in 2015, who broke the ceasefire and went back into Myanmar when they killed 18 of our soldiers there in Manipur. We brought them to justice. So we'll bring these guys to justice, there's no doubt. And 46 Assam Rifles is an excellent unit, and it'll rally back very, very quickly. And I'm certain that the Assam Rifles and the army will have brought all the resources there to bring them to justice.
Undoubtedly, Lieutenant General Shokeen.
There's one more issue that I thought is important, is that sometimes this longer periods of no activity or less activity tends to give people the impression that the northeast or Manipur insurgency or the insurgency in Nagaland has been sorted out. And it's just a matter of law and order. I don't agree. We cannot lose sight of the fact that there is an insurgency in this area, and there are many insurgent groups with much more weapons than there are in Kashmir. And Kashmir gets the eyeballs, and this place doesn't get the eyeballs. So we need to find solutions, Sarah. That's the main thing. We need to find solutions. We need to find them quickly, and we need to bring the population back with us.
Well, so then, that also leads one to wonder whether one let down one's guard. But let me ask you, Manipur, like many northeastern states, it's home to several armed groups fighting for either greater autonomy or succession. And for decades, the army has been deployed to the area. It has borders, as you point out, with Myanmar, with China, Bangladesh and Bhutan. So who would the Assam Rifles believe, or the state government believe, to be behind the attack, or who would they be suspecting? No group so far has claimed responsibility, correct, as far as we know?
Yes, which is surprising, because normally groups tend to immediately claim responsibility. Well, from from what the situation is on ground, Sarah, the people around that area are Kukis. Kuki has about 4 groups. Would any of these groups have tried to target him? That's one issue. Would they have, given this to the PLA to target? Or does the PLA have a reason to hit Colonel Biplab Tripathi or the army? Or was the PLA just trying to show its presence or trying to say that we exist also? So we're not very clear. What is clear is that, yes, Churachandpur is a border district. The international border is not far away. There is a lot of drug smuggling also that takes place there, Sarah. A lot of drug smugglers have been caught in the last 2 years. There could be some drug angle there also. There could be smuggling angle. So one is not very sure, Sarah, but we will get to the bottom of this. That much we can assure the nation. And we will make sure that the perpetrators pay for this crime. This is not going to be left easy. We will do everything in our power to bring them to justice.
Undoubtedly. Last question then, Lieutenant General. This area has been once a hotbed of militancy. As you point out, no big incident in the last few years, last 2 years at least. You've mentioned some issues, the drug issues, etc. Any idea why? Could there be anything behind the timing of this? I know that there are polls around the corner. In your opinion, what do you think could be behind the timing, the fact that we're seeing, would you say this is a resurgence?
No, this is not a resurgence. Northeast has this habit of erupting when you least expect it to. That's the issue about the Northeast. We have to sort out this problem. We can't let it fester, Sarah. And if we let it fester, then this is what happens. Nothing happens for 2 years, and on the 3rd year, somebody does something. And then the whole thing happens again. So half the time or 3/4 of the time, we're only reacting to issues. There are major governance issues there. There are smuggling there. There is a lot of drug smuggling, narcotic smuggling. And there are these groups. We have to bring them back to the mainstream. And we must take all efforts to do that as quickly as we can, Sarah. And not lose our sight on the fact that there is a festering insurgency there for the last 40 years. And if you take the Naga insurgency, it's from 1956. So we have to sort it out immediately. That's what I firmly believe. We cannot allow these things to continue. Yeah, not like this.
Lieutenant General Shaukin Chauhan, former DG of the Assam Rifles. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for giving us an idea of the challenges on the ground and really, the problem at large and the problem on hand. Thank you.
Pleasure, sir.
So we have to solve the problem at hand. How does one do that? The Manipur ambush, is it a new security threat in the northeast? Joining us now is Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, retired from ex-DG the infantry, and we have Ms. Brahmachalani, strategic affairs expert, and Lorho S. Froze, Lok Sabha MP from out of Manipur with the NPF, one of the major allies of the BJP-led Manipur government. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, to you first. We've just heard that the PLA and the MNPF have claimed responsibility for the attack, only to be expected. The PLA celebrates their Remembrance Day. That's the 12th and the 13th of November.
Right, Sarah, because firstly, I think it's extremely sad. Such a thing should not have happened at all. I think whatever it is bad and it should happen. Having said that, definitely I think PEPAK, which is a local thing, because it's the People's Revolutionary Party of the Kanglepak. Kanglepak means the ancient name of Manipur. And the People's Liberation Army is nothing but a militant arm of the same PEPAK. And therefore, you have a lot of things that go along with it. We cannot rule out even the hand of the Chinese in this, because the Chinese had lied low after Deng Xiaoping. I think there was a quietness that the Chinese had said they wouldn't interfere into the North. But what has happened is quite possible. But having said that, I must also be able to say that there's a lot that needs to be done. And that is what I think even General Shaukin, when he was talking about, the officer who's, Colonel Tripathi, since he's from my own regiment, the Kumau regiment, a lovely officer, a man who brought laurels because he was in Mizoram till about July of 21. and he was the one who was actually fighting the drugs and the narcotics, this thing, and he was actually being seen as someone damn good in that entire area. So, but of course, it's coming to Manipur only after July of 21. Good governance, what everybody talks about, is very, very important because we have a look-east policy, but now it's the north-east which integrates. The north-east is the nation's security, and it's very important. I say that because 88% of the borders of the north-east are with international. Only 12% are with India, and that to the Siliguri corridor. Please see to it. Even when you all are sitting here, as you rightly said, from the TV studios here in Delhi, the understanding of the Northeast is the most important thing. If we do not understand Northeast, every time ethnicity is, of course, the most important thing, but carrying it too far would also be on the plan. There are a lot of good governance involves border management, involves no leakage of funds. That's the most important thing. It must be the man on the ground must be. Can you imagine, for the last 30 years, there is no Hindi movie being screened in Manipur? No Hindi movie is screened in Manipur at all because there's the fear that Hindi might be seen and influenced because Arunachal Pradesh has turned absolute Hindi. There is a lot of love for Hindi in Arunachal Pradesh. In fact, that's a common language in Arunachal Pradesh. Manipur, Prepa got in that kind of a diktat. There is nothing. Of course, the kind of extortion that goes on, drugs, narcotics, so many things are a part of all this. I think it's very important. We have a lot of insurgents groups coming in for peace talks. Insurgency has dropped 80% in 2020. There is no denying the fact. Over 2,000 insurgents have surrendered.
Yes.
That's a big thing. But a lot needs to be done. Yeah.
Oh, a lot needs to be done. All right. Brahmachalani, prolonged insurgencies leave behind scars. 2008 was a period marked by uncertainty and chaos in the state. Insurgency was at its peak. You couldn't pick up a paper in the morning without, reading gory headlines of violence, unrest, fake encounters, etc. Yet, then we saw a period of lull. Certainly no violence over the last 2 years. Now this 10-year peace shattered by these IEDs. Why now, according to you?
Well, this is happening at a time when India and China are embroiled in a major military confrontation. And this pro-China group that has claimed responsibility, PLA, oddly names itself like the Chinese military as the People's Liberation Army. It adheres to Mao's thoughts. So ideologically, it's a Maoist organization, and it's split from the United National Liberation Front to pursue a broader separatist agenda that extends beyond Manipur. But I think the ambush attack is a reminder of two things. One, close counterinsurgency cooperation with Myanmar is so important, given the porous borders and the fact that cross-border movement of people and insurgents is common. Second, India cannot afford to join the Biden administration's effort to isolate military-ruled Myanmar. Biden is diplomatically engaging the terrorist regime in Kabul, and the US has held formal talks with the Taliban recently in Doha. Yet, the Biden administration treats Myanmar's military government as if it's a bigger threat to international security than the Kabul regime run by some of the world's deadliest terrorists. Military rule is nothing new to Myanmar. Directly or indirectly, the military has always called the shots in Myanmar since its independence. It is like Pakistan. But with Pakistan military, the US has always maintained cozy ties, even when the military was directly ruling Pakistan. For India, Myanmar is a very important neighbor. Yeah. Unlike India's northeast, Myanmar's north and east, including all the areas bordering India, are racked by insurgencies, some of them indirectly supported by China. So Myanmar and India have a common interest in stemming trans-boundary movement of insurgents and terrorists.
So lots of challenges really for this government, lot of, the international situation, international relations to factor in. Lozo S. Foze, what next then? Because this is a border state where an election is just around the corner. The assembly election will be held next year. This raises huge security concerns that the elections should go off peacefully. Civilians should not be affected. What is your government, what is the stand? What are the options ahead for you, for the government?
First of all, Sarah, thank you for taking me over in this group of discussions. Yeah, it has come at a time when, peace has been there in the state of Manipur for the past few years. And suddenly today, this news came as a shock.
Yeah.
It is such a dastardly, cowardly act of, violence that has been created. And this has come, it falls within my constituency in Outer Manipur. My constituency is very mountainous, the terrains are bad, and then the communications are not good, and the borders are very porous. And I think we really don't know the reasons why these things happened, but it has happened at a time when it is very, very bad for us here in Manipur. And as you have rightly mentioned, the elections are coming, they're just around the corner. And the past few weeks, we have seen a few incidences where there has been poll-related violence in some of the constituencies. I only hope that this will end here and that it will not continue. With the elections coming in very close, we are fearful that the poll violence may continue. We only hope that it doesn't. But
what will the government do about that? Lieutenant General Kulkarni, I want to ask you, the MP here, Dr. Loho, says that this was a horrific attack. It's come as a huge surprise. It's broken the tenuous peace, of the Manipur hills. But one aspect that must be mentioned is that just a week ago, we had 250 kgs of explosives that were recovered from forces from More in Manipur. This is along the Myanmar border. And the Assam Rifles had released a statement about this last week. So were there signals that were sent out? Should we have expected more attacks? Were there clear signals coming from this?
Sarah, what happens is after our relations with China have gone from bad to worse, you can expect this thing because there are numerous insurgent groups which would be supported by the Chinese, and they have bases in Myanmar, and from there things would be happening because even initially also all these things had been happening. Of course, this 250 kgs explosive being caught is an indication that something of this is likely to happen in the northeast. But let me also assure people, northeast is accepted to be a part of India. That is something which we must accept it that they have. Having said that, now I think it's time to have a Northeast Security Council. It is very essential because we have an activist policy. We must integrate. Integration of the Northeast is very essential because all these are indicators. Now we know we have enemy in China. Do we have any doubt on that? No way. We knew that all along the Chinese were interfering into the affairs of the Northeast. Having said that, yes, when the period was okay between the two countries, things were okay in the Northeast. The Chinese were not interested. But now, I think the PLA, having accepted their role in this blast and having targeted the commanding officer, is indicative that everything is pre-planned. It is not just off the cuff. And it is time, 10 o'clock in the morning, which is something which is very rare, at 10 in the morning to be able to do this kind of a thing. That is indicative that everything was pre-planned. Look at the way, first the ice blast, and thereafter to go and then fire. His wife is there, the child is there, the store is there, everyone is there. Then the firing goes on, in which all of these people lose their lives. There is a lot in it. We really need to be, it's a signal and it's a thing which we need to alert ourselves because anything like this happening again would be extremely sad. You're right, the polls are coming, there's no doubt. Polls come and go, but that's not very important. What is important is to ensure that China does not raise its head, especially in the Northeast, because that is something that concerns the nation's security. Yes.
The nation's security at stake. Thank you all. A huge strategic affairs problem for the government to tackle. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we absorb this horrific, terribly tragic loss of the commanding officer of the Assam Rifles Battalion in an ambush by terrorists in Manipur, along with his wife, his young son and other soldiers. We are grateful as civilians and we pay homage to our soldiers who are risking their lives and their families all the time. Thank you all for joining us.